welcome everybody. It's time once again for the next chapter with Charlie Hedges as he explores turning the page on his life and yours. Hey, Charlie.
Yo, Producer Paul. What's up, man?
Well, you've got a return guest.
I know. I'm very excited.
Doesn't happen very often. You had a good response the last time.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to this. Today, we are privileged to have once again on our show a very recent guest, Dr. Randall Bell. In our previous podcast, we talked about his latest book, Post-Traumatic Thriving, which has turned out to be one of our most popular episodes on the next chapter with Charlie. That's one of the reasons I wanted to get him back, because today we're going to go in another direction as we discuss an earlier book titled Me, We, Do, Be, The Four Cornerstones of Success. Now, although the Cornerstones of Success explores four key traits that successful people share, Dr. Bell suggests a unique approach to success. He comes to success through the lens of what it means to be a person of value, not a person of accumulations. Dr. Bell is a socioeconomist. He is internationally recognized for his work as a trauma specialist, but is also recognized as a man that simply understands what it means to live a life worth living. And that's what we talk about today. So with that, let's bring on our guest, Randall Bell. Welcome to the next chapter with Charlie.
Well, Paul and Charlie, it's a pleasure to be here, and I get invited a lot of places, rarely invited back. So it's good to be back.
I don't know what that says.
Me neither.
So I was thinking, and I'm really curious, you seem to possess unusual expertise in a handful of disciplines, including real estate and economics, but also deep knowledge of acute trauma, and then on to strategies for a meaningful life. That's a lot of things, Randall. What has led you to such diversity of thought?
Tell everybody in my personal life, I'm just a weird dude. I have very eclectic interests. I wrote a book on Leo Fender and the electric guitar, Me, We, Do, Be, trauma. I wrote a textbook on real estate. I just kind of go where my interests are, and started with real estate, and then I met the people behind the statistics. They were more interesting, and so I did another book. And it just kind of go where my interests are, and they tend to be all over the place.
I like that. You know, there are people that go real deep in one subject, just extraordinarily deep in one subject, and others that scatter around to several subjects. And then there are those of us, and I'm similar to you, I think, that go reasonably deep into a handful of subjects because different things seem interesting, and I want to pursue them to a greater degree, and that sounds much the same thing as you.
Yeah, I get on a topic and I obsess on it, and they're often very different topics. So for me, it works. I think business-wise, strategy-wise, it's better to specialize in just one topic.
Yep.
I think the adult D in me doesn't allow me to do that.
If I did that, I have two experiences in my life where most everybody agrees, had I stayed with those, I would be a pretty wealthy guy. They were two really, really good ideas. But after 7 to 10 years, I just said, I'm done. I just have no interest in. And like 4 or 5 years after I dropped out, they became, multi-million-dollar businesses by other people. But, I wouldn't change paths.
I totally get that. I mean, my main business remains to be real estate damage economics, and that's been a really satisfying career. But I spend a lot of time on the plane, and that gives me the time to sit down with a laptop and kind of go in various creative ways. So it's a nice blend that I've got going with my interests.
That's really cool. You know what I thought would be a fun way to begin here is to rehearse just a bit of the work you do in the area of trauma. You are so well known at that, and you were called by some or by many the master of disaster. Ken, let's do this briefly, but tell us what that's all about.
Well, the LA Times did a profile on my career, and I think the first line was, Randall Bell is the master of disaster. At first, I didn't like it, and I thought, you know what, just go with it. And when I give speeches to youth groups or, high school age kids, we hand out master of disaster baseball caps and stuff, and it just, anything to keep people's attention long enough to explain the things that we need to know. I think I'll just go with it, and that's where it all came from.
So tell me about the discipline. What does it mean to be the master of disaster?
Well, what I do is when there's disasters around the country, anything from Hurricane Katrina to O.J. Simpson, John Benet Ramsey, nuclear weapons test sites on the Bikini Atoll, the World Trade Center. I've worked on.
And these are big. These are big deals, Randall. These are like internationally, impactful situations. So this is huge.
They're the biggest cases in the world, and I think in the last year we've settled or gone to trial on $5 or $6 billion worth of verdicts. They're very big deals. I've kind of gotten accustomed to that world, but this is the money that, the court system doesn't award apologies or hugs. They award dollars, and somebody's got to compute that, and that's what I do. But in the process of doing that, I see a lot of people's perceptions and behaviors, and I can't help but be fascinated by that, and that takes me in some other areas. So it all kind of works together, and yeah, it's big, and it's important, and it's fascinating, at least to me.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And so you are helping, you assist in computing or figuring out, what's the word I'm looking for, what the damage, yeah. And that comes from your economics and your sociology background?
Primarily economics. I got involved in sociology after I, did economics, because with sociology, you're talking about groups of people and behavioral issues, which I find even more interesting. But really, the combination of the two, it's hard to compute. I don't want to say I think you get a better feel for the economics when you also understand the perceptions and the behaviors behind those situations. So I think they work kind of together.
That's brilliant. There's so many areas in life that we tend to compartmentalize, and we don't see the integration or the transitions that, if you know this, that seems completely, at first glance, it seems not consistent with the subject matter, but after you study, you see the direct correlation. So I think that's a brilliant approach.
It's been helpful. I mean, my doctoral dissertation was in socioeconomics, so I literally combined sociology and economics into one doctoral dissertation, and I was really happy with that, how that all turned out.
Okay, so just as curiosity for me, I don't know what the audience thinks, but what was your dissertation?
It was on the socioeconomic effects of the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina.
Oh, so that got you into the Master of Disaster zone, your PhD dissertation.
I was already called the Master of Disaster back in, I think, like 20 years ago by the LA Times. I've been doing this since, before you guys were born. So,
well, not before Randall, it was not before I was born, buddy.
Well, I'm kidding around, but yeah, I've been doing this since the 1980s.
1980s, I was 30.
Me too.
Okay, let's move along here to get onto our topic. So it was more than 6 years ago you wrote the book that is titled Me, We, Do, Be, and it's a book we will discuss on the show today, and it appears that it continues to be a very popular read today. Why do you think that is? After all, books on how to live a successful or meaningful life are in the tens of thousands at least. I dare not say hundreds of thousands, but I'll say tens of thousands for sure. What do you believe it is that draws readers to continue to draw readers to Me, We, Do, Be?
think it's its simplicity. I mean, a coach doesn't go out on the basketball, floor or the football field or anywhere without a game plan. And and businesses, as you know, have to have a business plan. It's the same thing with life. We need a life plan. And so what I did is I took principles of business planning and strategic planning, and I made them accessible to, the high schooler or the college kid or anybody who wants a really smart game plan. And title's very deliberate. Me is our mindset, our attitude, our intellect. That's all me. We is our relationships, because nobody's successful by themselves. It's always a team effort. And we addresses the teamwork. And then do is, rolling up our sleeves and getting it done in terms of managing our finances and our space. And B is what we're becoming. It's goal setting and time management and that skill set. So you put it all together, me, we, do, be, and you have a really smart game plan. And I've seen over and over again, people go with that simple program and their lives turn around and they get on track and they achieve really great stuff. It's simplicity that works.
That's funny. I just took, excuse me, I just took an assessment that's called something about why, the why you're doing it. And it looks at why you do things, how you do things, and what you do. And, mine was, for instance, master. And that means, not all the details, but that like you, when I get a subject, I pursue it deeply, so I want to master that subject. But my how I do things, and it sounds very similar to you, it's simplify. I take these very complex ideas that I have been researching for months, or sometimes years, and try to simplify them so people don't have to read books. They can read just a couple of pages and get the overall idea. And so I really am there's a place for mastery and deep thought, but there's also a place to just understand things for simplicity. So I really applaud that you do simplicity. I think that's great.
Thanks. We're on the same page. The me cornerstone is the theme there is identify the why, and we're on exactly the same page.
Are we? Yeah, you might want to take. We'll talk afterward, and I'll send you the website. I think it's free, and it's rather my executive. I have a personal coach, and she is a big fan of it, and had me take it, and I found it rather helpful. For an assessment tool. Okay, before we get on to the meat of the book, which I'm dying to do, but there's just one other thing first, and this really struck me, Randall. You write, our ultimate goal is not to become a success in terms of accumulating power, prestige, or more stuff. But, as Einstein said, our goal in life is to become a person of value. Love that. Talk to me about it.
Well, in my world, I've got a lot of clients that are certainly millionaires and a few are even billionaires. And I notice that some of them really get wrapped up into their materialistic stuff. And I don't see a lot of satisfaction that comes out of that particular game plan, but I see others that are very, very down to earth, that drive around beat up trucks and don't take themselves that too seriously. And I mentioned Leo Fender. He lived 2 streets away from me, and he was very down to earth. And today, his company that he started sells $1 billion a year in guitars.
Do they really? It's $1 billion company? I didn't know that.
Yeah, and all from Fullerton, California, where I grew up.
Really?
And when I came across that Einstein quote, it just kind of validated kind of my observation. I made that kind of an important theme of the book is, so when you get to the end of the line, you're not going to be bragging about how much stuff you got. You're going to be talking about the relationships and the friendships and the family and those are the things of real value.
They really are. It's an old, tired quote, but I still like it. Denzel Washington, a lot of people have said it, not just Denzel, but Denzel said, At a funeral, you don't see a hearse followed by a U-Haul. That always struck me of the success. I so agree with you, and that is such a difficult task to master in our country because of something I just have this love-hate relationship with, and that's the American dream of success and accumulation. It is a wonderful dream. It's why we have immigrants. People want to do that, but for those of us Americans, it becomes very sort of self-centered and accumulation and possession and money-oriented. Do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And the way I put it in the book is that, anybody that says money doesn't matter has never spent the night underneath a bridge. Money does matter. But we did a survey. We surveyed 5,000 people in the United States, Canada, Australia, the UK. We reconciled various habits with certain behaviors. And what we found is really remarkable. If you have enough money to pay your basic bills, and that depends on where you live, the number can be around $50,000 a year, pay your fundamental bills, then you're as likely to be as happy as a billionaire. Now, if you're homeless and you can't pay your bills, basic bills, and then obviously that's a very tough, unhappy situation. But once you're at that threshold where you can take basic care of yourself, like I say, billionaires are no happier than anybody else. I know some billionaires that are very, very happy, but their happiness is not really rooted in their money. I just had lunch today, no kidding, with a guy. I don't know if he's a billionaire, but I know he has hundreds of millions of dollars. And he was talking about lunch, who the causes and the places where he's giving his money away to. It's not from greed and accumulation. It's about he gets a tremendous high out of helping others. So that's really kind of the secret here.
I so concur. It's a big part of our life. Service and giving is a big part of our life, and it's I'd love to be really sort of saintly and say that it's personal sacrifice. It's not. I live a nice life. I have a nice car and a nice house, but giving is very important to us. It's not a secondary, let's think about this. Consider giving goes first on our list. And there's nothing more gratifying than especially helping the poor, the disenfranchised, the people that don't have access, like we provide water in Uganda. They don't have water. People are dying all over the country because of lack of water, and we've provided water to over 1 million individuals. And that's what I want my legacy to be.
Yeah, very, very well said. I couldn't agree more. For somebody out there who's young and has a lot of energy and wants to light the world on fire, make a fortune, I hope that they do. And I hope they do it very quickly and get a ton of money so they can quickly understand how meaningless and get that out of their system. And then refocus life in areas of real substance. Because again, I'm not saying money doesn't matter. I've got a nice car too and nice home, and I'm very fortunate, like a lot of people around here are. But the real satisfying aspect of life is helping out the grandkids, helping out people that you see. Mm-hmm. That's where the real joy comes from.
No kidding. I'm thinking of taking a slight divergence from our show and maybe taking an early break because I want to get into the book. I don't want to be interrupted in the book, Paul. So I think, what we may do is take a very brief break right now, and then we're going to get into the 4 cornerstones of success. Does that sound okay to you, Randall?
Absolutely.
Okay. Hi there. I'm laughing at producer Paul giving me instructions. This is Charlie Hedges with the next chapter with Charlie. And my very, very, very special guest is Dr. Randall Bell, who is, I don't know, I'm going to call him a polymath, but he's got a minor in that degree of polymath. He has so many disciplines that he's working on. And today we're going to talk about his book, Me, We, Do Be, The Four Cornerstones of Success. I've got your four cornerstones written down, but I'm wondering, Randall, where might you like to start this conversation?
I think it's just to start with the whole question of why, like we were talking about before the break, and breaking down life into its four components, which is our mind. We hear the different models out there. There's mind, body, and soul, and there's different ones. But this one, Me, We, Do, Be, is a really great game plan, because you can take any element, goes into all these various life strategy courses, and I've taken them and I've been interested in them. They all fit within Me, We, Do, Be, and just kind of understanding that overall framework, that alone alleviates some of the anxiety in putting together a kind of a game plan for life.
Yeah, I like that. They're almost more, not quite. I mean, they're very strategic, but they're almost more tactics that could be subsumed under a handful of strategies, because they are so applicable, they're so widely applicable.
Yeah, they are. And then what I did for each of the four cornerstones is we did this survey around the country, and we reconciled various habits to various measures of success, so that you see that, for example, if you read books, there's statistics to go along that correlate to various measures of success. I walked in the office one day, and the PR person said, "You know what? ESPN is talking about you, because an NFL star is talking about your book, Me, We, Do, Be, and how he makes his bed every morning, and he attributes his success on the football field to the fact that he puts his mind into a productive mindset by making his bed, and he got it from your book." Wow, that's pretty crazy. So these little strategies are really profoundly simple. They're very, very powerful, and statistically, they really work. I'm not really that into anecdotal stuff. I like facts and figures and evidence to show that, hey, if I'm going to, induce this attitude or this habit into my life, it's going to have material effects, and that's what this book is all about, and that's why people are still talking about it.
That's great. So why don't we start off? Let's get into it. Tell me about, this sounds awkward. Tell me about me.
Me, I just mentioned reading, and I just looked it up. It's on page 53 of the book, the survey result. But those who read regularly, 700 books or more a year, dominate in all areas of income and net worth. They're 122% more likely to become millionaires for those who don't read. So that's
they're 122% more likely. It doesn't surprise me at all.
The other one is to take time in solitude. Some people call it daily quiet time, because those who take a little time in the morning to just meditate or pray or sit in the quiet, whatever you want to call it. I'm not pushing any kind of agenda here, but just having quiet time where you sit with your own thoughts, are 92.3% more likely to have a advanced college degree. So again, these little habits we can do in each of the cornerstones enhance the quality of our life.
I love the addition of science in your sort of non-scientific. Your conclusions don't scientific, but they are based on great data. That is 92% of people that enjoy the life of solitude have a college degree. Did I understand that right?
Yeah. It's all statistically correlated. And the law of large numbers is you just have to interview 30 people to have a statistically valid study. We interviewed 5,000 people on numerous, on different continents. So we're pretty confident in the results here.
Personally, I so agree with I'm in a discipline that talks about the annihilation of the ego, and that's the false ego. That's the ego that we mentioned earlier of possession, prestige, and power. That's usually the false ego, the negative ego that gets us in trouble, but we do have a healthy ego. And I believe so strongly in self-awareness and personal growth. And since 2020, we may have talked about it before, but I have pursued a lifestyle that is influenced by the late medieval Christian mystics, Teresa of Avila, John of the Cross, Julian of Norwich, Bonaventure, Saint Francis of Assisi. So it's Christian, but it's if you're not familiar with those writings, it's very different than what you would read in Christianity in the 2000s. It's much more about solitude and quiet and contemplation and trying to focus on your spirituality and on your relationship or impacts of the divine in your life. Whatever title you put on that. I put on that God, but other people have other things they put on it, and it's life-changing, Randall. My time, I have a lot of time of solitude. I'm an introvert, although Paul, a lot of people don't believe it because I do well with strangers. But when I'm by myself, there is no noise, there is nothing going on. So I so agree with this solitude and contemplative approach. I am almost horrendously self-aware, and it makes me very critical of myself.
I hear you loud and clear. Christianity is so interesting because it's been hijacked by some very noisy people. And
that's a great way to put it. That is a wonderful sentence. Hijacked by some, what kind of people?
Noisy.
Noisy people. Yes.
With an agenda.
Agenda.
Yeah, one of the most interesting things that Jesus actually said in the New Testament, and it's my favorite scripture. It's the only one I have memorized. Luke chapter 17, he says, the kingdom of God is within you, which is think about it, it's a very Buddhist thing to say. And so the answers aren't here or out there. Jesus says the answers are within you. So again, whether you're Buddhist or Christian or whatever, or agnostic, taking quiet time allows us to connect with our inner voice. And that's what this is all about, really.
I concur. That's really good. So you're my first interview that I'm not using any of the questions, but you know where I looked up interview questions for Randall Bell?
Where?
Chat GBT or GPT. Randall, it is shocking. We are done. AI, the question is, now they weren't particularly my kind of questions, but they were a good set of questions. This was, and it just did it in seconds. And here's the thing they said about me. Focus on self-awareness and personal growth. This includes developing a positive mindset, identifying one's strengths, weaknesses, and setting goals. How does that sound to you?
I like it. It sounds good.
Chat GPT.
It's hilarious. This is the first time anybody's done that. This is going to go down in my personal history book.
And wait till you start using it. You're going to be shocked.
Okay.
Because everybody's going to use it. I mean, no matter where we are on that thing, it's just too influential. So let's move on to the next one. Let's move on because I think we, with some subsets of our society, happens to be very community oriented, but with the majority of us, especially on the right side of the equation, are very individualistic. It seems to be, and we is missing. And that focus on building strong relationships with others. Talk to me about we.
On the we cornerstone, you're right. I know a lot of successful people. I know you do too. I've never met anybody that did it all on their own. It's teamwork and getting along with others and having people skills is an absolute essential if one is really ambitious and wants to do something productive. And the synergy is that 1 + 1 can equal 3. So many times I come up with great ideas. I think that I've come up with great ideas, but if I'm really honest about it, it was a collaborative effort when I get in front of my team and we throw some things around and kick ideas around, and we come up with things I couldn't have done on my own. And I'm certainly not unique. Everybody's the same way. And just respecting the power of the team is a really, a critically important starting point for the whole we Cornerstone.
Yeah, when I think of we, I must admit my first impression is to think about the teamwork and the doing things together, and my sort of social values, that my values are community oriented, not just my own personal desires. But you talk about that. I mean, you write about that. That's important to you. To me, what's even more important is you're talking about developing empathy, communication skills, willingness to collaborate, and to share credit. Do you know how missing that is with so many leaders of corporations in the United States, to develop empathy, especially develop empathy and share credit? They all want to take the credit. There's such narcissistic behaviors going on that and that's coming from weak egos, that we forget those, and yet that's the way we should live, is it not?
Absolutely. One of the statistics in my book, Me We Do Be, is to have it. Number 14 is to be kind. Let me just read this. It's very short.
Sure.
Those who smile and speak positively are 43.5% more likely to be happy, and if that doesn't cut it, you're up to 46% more likely to become millionaires. So there's a big payoff for just being kind.
That's funny you would say that. Boy, no wonder I wanted to interview you. My personal lifestyle is so consistent with what you're talking about, in that we are working. I think any coach that doesn't have a coach is kind of nuts. I always have a coach that I work with, that I run things by, and I've had a few, and it's funny. My last 3 coaches have all been women. I love the feminine presence and what's called the visit from the divine feminine, and they bring so much to me in this. And with my bunny rabbit hole there, I forgot what I was going to say about it. Oh, but my coach told me, because in my life, and it has been, I look back, I'm 73, and I look back at the last 50 years or so, and kindness has always, it doesn't mean I can't be a jerk and I can't do stupid things and sometimes, oftentimes inconsiderate, but kindness and loving kindness are really 2 of my most important values in life, and they have served me so well with other people. But you're right, it serves me with me. It makes me feel better than myself, than running around bitching and moaning about other people.
Yeah, I get it. And you mentioned the female divine side of things. There's a statistic here that those who put real effort into their romantic life are 626% happier than those who don't. And if that doesn't cut it, they're 38.7% more likely to have a high income. So
if they do what? If they what kind of life?
They're 38% more likely to have high incomes.
Who is? I missed the who.
Those who put efforts into their romantic life.
Oh, the romantic. I thought you said manic life, and I'm thinking this is not computing.
I mean, paying attention to our significant other is really critically important, both in terms of happiness and our earning capacity. In other words, if we're just selfish and think about ourselves, it's ironically one of the smartest things we can do, and our personal goals are to think of others.
That's interesting that you would say. I have experienced this, and then of late I've read it. It seems to be a bit at least I'm reading more of it lately than I ever read in the past. And that is, for those of us that are married, the best and most accurate indicator of your spiritual life is your relationship with your wife. And because the real you comes out. And if you're self-reflective and honest and caring, you find the wonders and you find the issues to say, I was kind of a jerk there. I probably could have gone without saying that. And that is the way you treat others. And you know what another way I think, with your wife, another way I think of taking care of demonstrating kindness, and it is one of my secret sort of evaluators. How do you treat salespeople? How do you treat people in clothing stores, grocery stores? The front. Yeah, Paul says the front desk here at the studio. I'm always chatting with the person at the desk, but those that are, gosh, and I really don't even like saying that, but those of what is considered a lesser social class, when you treat everybody as equals, there's a whole different mentality.
Oh, 100%. I forget who it was. That might have been Henry Ford or someone. Took some recruits out to dinner, and he noticed how they treated the servers, the waiters and waitresses, and he hired the people that treated them with dignity and respect, and let go of the ones who were disrespectful. And that's a really wise perception of how we treat others. It doesn't really matter where they are on society's totem pole. Everybody deserves to be respected. At least that's what the science shows, and that's what I think.
I agree. So let's move on to what feels like the action word, do. I mean, it's not as if me and we are not action words. They are really verbs in your vocabulary. So tell me about do.
Do's the financial and taking care of our, exercising, taking care of ourselves. It's all those, taking care of our environment, keep being clutter-free is essential. And it's little habits like finding a job that you like. I mean, the old motto is that if you find a job you like, you don't work a day in your life because you're enjoying it. Another thing is saving. Those who save not only are sure to accumulate wealth, that's just math, but on top of that, they're 35% more likely to have a better romantic life. I mean, in other words, saving money is very romantic because it's fiscally responsible. So, and of course, gambling is very, very toxic. I mean, it's one thing to gamble $20 for fun, but gambling is really correlated with a lot of negative stuff. So it's rules like of life that are like that.
Half of what you said I do well, and the other half of what you said probably is defines my need to improve, and that's taking care of my physical health and my financials. We do well with that, but I don't take care of, as I said, I'm 73. I don't take care of my body, and I'm healthy. I'm genetically DNA'd healthy, but at 73, that's not going to last till I'm 90. I've got to do, if I make 90, I'm not going to do that. So that is an area that I certainly need to work on.
I think we all do, to be fair. My mom's 100, and she's going to be turning 101 in July. And just whether it be taking some walks, just keeping some movement going is what's essential. We don't need to become Charles Atlas and swim the English Channel or anything, but just keep moving and taking the stairs rather than the elevator. Like that can really keep us.
Isn't that true? My doctor says all I have to do is just, do this. I have this 1 mile walk around my neighborhood, and it takes, 15 minutes or 20 minutes. And And he says, if you just do that, and he says, ideally like 5 days a week, but if you only do it 3 days a week, you're going to increase your health substantially. And how difficult is that? My wife and I walk, and we have a nice chat, or if I walk by myself, I sometimes just do it in silence, paying attention and, to what's going on around me. And sometimes I listen to a podcast. But that's one of my improvement areas. So the do is taking action, and I like this, achieving one's goals. And maybe before we say that, we would say identifying one's goals, because so many don't even have goals. I take what I may, I take what comes when I wake up, and I don't have a goal or an objective for the day.
Yeah, absolutely. The goal setting, that's in the do. It doesn't really matter, but that's in the do category, or excuse me, the B category.
Oh, is it? Okay.
It is, and but it doesn't. You don't go to me, we do B jail and get the wrong category. Address the stuff. Yeah, what we're becoming, having written goals, and just sticking it on your mirror. That correlates with success, as opposed to just having a kind of an obscure or abstract idea rattling around your head. Committing it to writing and putting it in a place where you frequently see it, that can really turn into a reality.
I have to mention something that, I've mentioned it before on the show, but it's something that came from a book I wrote a handful of years ago titled Getting the Right Things Right, Personal Strategies for Reinventing the Life You Want. And I put, and I suggested 4 categories: passion, purpose, people, and praise. And I then just listed under each one just 3 or 4 actions I could do to keep passion. Action I could do to be consistent with my talents and skills and be purposeful. Actions with people, what kind of relationships do I have and how do I develop them? And praise is how do I develop that inner life? Whether, I say praise because, as I said, God is an entity in my life, but it could be anything. It could be, I've turned it into, for others, power. What is the internal sort of universal power? And I have like 4 or 5 things under each one. Now, I take a look at those. I do not review those daily nor weekly. I review those monthly. And I give myself a plus, check, or minus. And anything that gets a minus, sort of consistently, means one of 2 things. Either it was a bad goal, because we can, at the time we created goals, can be, not really the right goals for us. But if it's a good goal that shows an area that I need to improve, and I've got to tell you, Randall, it's been inordinately helpful. Because just taking a look at it monthly reminds me of not just the 3 or 4 things that I want to accomplish, but the handful of things that accomplish big areas in my life.
Yeah, I love that. That's, having some structure is essential. I think the way I take your comments there, Charlie, is having some structure and having some direction. We never hit a target we don't have, and simply having a target, whether it's passion or action or praise, those words, picking something to go for is half the battle. This is we haven't done B. We just did do. We haven't done B, so let's do B, and then we can move on. Well, one of the best things we can do in the B thing is, once we've kind of mastered something, take the time to teach someone else about it. Whether, going down to the homeless shelter, which is something I did for years, or our own kids, or whoever, mentoring somebody at work. But teaching is very much part of the whole B cornerstone, and passing along our legacy to the younger generation. I like that. And you know what I like for legacy? Tell me what you think of my definition of legacy. Legacy, for me, is not an organization, a statue, my name on a plaque somewhere. But let's go back to kindness. If I am habitually kind, I am, in essence, teaching other people to be kind as well.
And if that kindness spreads, and whether my name is known with it or not makes no difference. If that kindness becomes more of a part of lifestyle of many people, that is a legacy to me. And the legacy doesn't have to be attributed to me. I'm just one of a gabillion people that are on the planet Earth, and why would my name be known? But if I can have an action, if I can have something that serves humanity, that is a legacy. Does that make any sense to you?
Completely. I mean, what you're talking about is the butterfly effect. I mean, a butterfly flaps its wings off in Japan, and that sends off currents that end up around the world. And it's the same thing. An act of kindness. Life's tough. People are going through, tough challenges every day, and we never know what people are going through. And simply being that only person that smiles and says hello can turn things around. And then that resonates with somebody that they treat better, and on down the line. And our little behaviors, our little actions really can have some big, profound effects that we may not even know about, but we know we're doing the right thing by kind of, doing the right thing.
I so agree. Okay, now producer Paul is telling me it's time to stop, because that's what producers do, right? They control time, but it's my show. So I want to close our session with just a couple philosophical thoughts. We've talked philosophically and we've talked tactically, but this is more philosophically, and they come from a couple thoughts from your book. One, the world is flooded with information, but starving for wisdom. And the other, which I like even better, we rise to the level of our illumination. That's brilliant. Can you close us out with that?
Well, sure. I think that there's all kinds of avenues we can go. We can get addicted to TikTok or technologies and Facebook and all of that. I think, and that's all fun. I do that stuff myself. I'm not trying to be down on any of that. But taking time to really develop wisdom, I think having a spiritual cornerstone is essential, and taking time, particularly in the morning, because that sets the tone for the rest of the day. Making our bed, it puts our brains into a productive mindset, and sitting down with, whether it be scripture or something inspirational or the writings of Abraham Lincoln, or whatever that looks like to one's own worldview and belief system, and filling our head with something of substance and of wisdom. Dr. King, I'm a big fan of. There's so many role models that can teach wisdom. Really sets the tone for the rest of the day, as opposed to just kind of the cotton candy the world is full of. Putting something of nutritional mental value into our brains to kick the day off with is this really a small but very powerful habit.
I love it, and I sorry, producer, but I got another question, and that is, that is much more doable for those people like me that are in. Although I'm very busy, I'm in the retired state, so I get to determine what I do with my hours. What about the people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s that's got 3 and 4 kids? They're working. They get up early. They go. Where do they find time for meditation, inspiration, and thinking thoughts like that? Do they just have to get up ridiculously early, or do you have some other sort of magic formula?
That's such a great, powerful question, Charlie, because my cardiologist is always telling me that I need to do deep breathing exercises for a half hour in the morning and a half hour at night. I'm not sure what planet she's from, but, in today's society, I don't have a half hour. What I've discovered that if I'm in an elevator, I can shut my eyes and take 7 deep breaths. I'm presuming I'm alone. So you can... So in the car on the drive to work, you can put in something inspirational rather than just listening, hard rock like I tend to do. You can steal little moments here and there to add that wisdom component. It doesn't have to be big, long chunks of time off on a desert island by ourselves. We can sneak time, deep breathe, or read just a simple verse of something.
Right.
That value. We can all do that. There's no excuse for not doing that.
Just have to, it's in your book, you talk about habits. It's about creating that habit.
And they're small and they're simple, and literally they can take just seconds.
Incredible. You are, Dr. Randall Bell, you are such a treat to be with. Thank you. Thank you so much for being on the show a second time.
Well, thank you, Charlie and Paul. I really appreciate the invitation to come back and talk to you, and I hope we can do it again.
Yeah, well, you're so good. You know, I certainly will. And with that, I also want to thank our listeners for tuning into the next chapter with Charlie. And until next, this is Charlie Hedges signing off. Bye for now.